Hare Krishna. So we promised you we'll finish at 5 o'clock. And we want to keep that promise, so we paid a very hefty price in order to do that. We had to cancel the panel discussion, and I apologize profusely for that. Is everybody going to forgive me for doing that? Anybody objects to that? Everyone's happy, okay. We have the last half an hour together. What we want to do is just take a moment to just sum up and wrap up what we discussed today, and to leave here with 2 or 3 points, 2 or 3 resolutions that we would consider the work for the BBT. We can't allow BBT to say all of these really, cover a lot of ground, and when we come here in 5 or 6 years' time, we have to account for something. So I've made my own notes. I'm sure you have your notes. From what I heard in most of the conversation today, it seems to me that everyone accepts as an established fact that Srila Prabhupada's books are the best wireless connection to Krishna, who's the reservoir of all mercy. And some of the other, if we touch the book, print the book, even in the drama we saw it, some of the other, we have something to do with the book. As a temple president, as an ordinary devotee, as somewhere in the system, in the universe of ISKCON, if we have something to do with Srila Prabhupada's books, there is this special mercy flowing in our direction. So devotees have the mindset that they're evangelists. They are Vaishnava evangelists who care for the welfare of living entities. And the best way to benedict the living entity is to give them something valuable, and Srila Prabhupada's books are the most valuable thing we have. So at this point in time, what we want to do is just read to you what I have here. Of course, you may disagree with this, so please just raise your hand and say, I think there should be a different resolution. From my notes, the first resolution would be that Back to Godhead magazine appears to be a tremendous preaching opportunity. It has a multiplier effect for the economy of ISKCON. We saw the numbers, we heard Jai Lalita make very profound statements about it. And South Africa happens to have 50% of the world's publication of BTG. There are 13,000 copies printed in the world, 6,000 comes to the Republic of South Africa. So you have to accept that when you have that kind of statistic, that clearly there's something special about it, okay? So the resolution number 1 was that we would want to look to increase BTG on the same baseline as we did for books, a 20% increase in year 1. Is that an acceptable resolution? So if you're doing 6,000 copies, you're looking to do 1,200 more subscriptions. It's bite-sized, it's digestible, the gestation period wouldn't be too long. We're talking about a 12-month plan here. And thereafter we go another 20% next year, etc. Can we accept that as a resolution? 20% increase in Back to Godhead subscriptions. Jayananda has blessed it. Maj is about to oppose it.
I think Dwarkavasini,
Dwarkavasini, how does the 20% increase sound to you? Dwarkavasini thinks that's too low.
Yeah. Dwarkavasini, you agree 20% is too low? What should it be? Look at the fear. Come stand where I'm standing. Look at the fear in the faces of the devotees. You've got your back to them. You see, I'm looking at the reality. We said 20% per annum, so that's 1,200. Okay, so there's a view here that's saying 20% is too less. Did anybody else have a view? See, what you don't want to do is ever commit to something because it's like, wow, I'm in an environment that appears to be emotionally surcharged, and I want to commit to something, but we have to have the ability to deliver that. Guru Gauranga Prabhu, yeah.
I think if we had enough information, like what is the congregational size in South Africa, and then maybe try to get everybody to take the BTG subscription.
Yeah. Well, I could just give a very broad response to that. There's 600,000 Hindus in South Africa, I think, from 1.2 million Indians. There used to be a higher percentage, but if you go to Phoenix and Chatsworth, there's a mass scale of conversions. Of the 600,000, 6,000 subscriptions would represent hardly 1%. So that's the headspace you're looking at. And I think that's a substantial headspace. So if BTG, if the content is relevant and the magazine is appropriate, clearly it belongs in the home of every Hindu, if you want to say that. But we're not really interested only in Hindus, we're interested in all South Africans. But to answer that question, I think that's there. And I think the gap's too wide. And you know what's amazing about BTG? In the last 20 years, since Jagadananda Prabhu and His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj fired up this program, the number of 6,000 has pretty much been consistent. So if you were the marketing manager of Coca-Cola, and 20 years ago your market size was X, and 20 years later your market size is still X, you can expect the board of Coca-Cola to fire the CEO. But you see, at ISKCON we don't have these instruments to measure and judge, etc. The reality is that we are talking brass tacks. We are the same as what we were 20 years ago. So maybe that's where Maharaj is coming from. You've got a base, you've built up to 6,000 and it just plateaued. Never moved anyway. So maybe you may have a compelling argument if you're saying that it should be looked like that. Manaji, you have a view, yeah?
I just want to ask you, it's BBT Africa, right? Why is the focus on South Africa? What about the rest of the African continent? The countries that haven't been infiltrated? Africa is, fertile preaching ground. Why so much a focus on South Africa? I repeat, what about the other African countries?
For BTG?
Yes.
Well, wherever we have the conference, we have that conversation. But here, we have got particularly South Africa under the lens today. We're speaking about Africa, but this particular topic now we're speaking about has a resolution for South Africa. So South Africa is under the lens. We can't commit Ghana, those temple presidents will get on my case.
No, but I'm not talking about ISKCON centers, the 6 that are represented here from the other African countries. But, BBT Africa, isn't it time now to have that trail of progression where the rest of the African countries are going to be taken into consideration?
Yeah, they do. There is already some foundational work being done. You see, since the time Srila Bhakti Maharaj left the planet, if you analyze the scores in West Africa and West Africa, you would see there's a marked decline. We sit and spend a lot of time analyzing these numbers. I was interested today that nobody brought up that BBT books are too expensive, because very generally people say the books are too expensive, therefore we can't distribute them. But I'm glad nobody said that, because that's a total economic myth. We've done a lot of analysis on that. So the other parts of Africa are all sprouting. Ghana is sprouting, Nigeria is sprouting, Ivory Coast, we're going to be there next year for the conference. It'll take its own form and shape. The particular resolution on the table concerns South Africa. So I want to try and resolve this particular one. We're saying 20% increase. Maharaj and Dwarka Varsini feels it's too low. So I'm trying to get some other views.
We'll settle at 30%.
30% is on the table, sounds like an auction. 30%? 30% means 1,800 subscriptions. You see, you look at it this way. You have 1,538 initiated devotees. Devotees who are connected to the disciplic succession. Devotees who have taken vows. Just their mindset should be in Sankirtan, and the evangelists, as I was saying, for Srila Prabhupada's books. So you take the per capita. 1,500, your per capita ratio is 4. 6,000 subscriptions. 1,500 devotees, 4 subscriptions each. So if you look around us and say, well, how many can I do? Well, Govardhana, I can do, if I had to offer, I'll say I can do 20. So I'm 5 times below the average. So what it should be is 20 times 1,600 initiated devotees. So what is that number? That's probably the analysis somebody needs to do. But where we are here, because we were in the conversation, if we have a number, then our book distribution minister would note it down, and he will resource this effort. He will fire it up. He will reconfigure whatever needs to be reconfigured. And then, because we have a consensus, it's highly unlikely we'll get this august gathering of Vaishnavas in a short while just talking about books and BTGs. So if we agree a number here, then the management system, tomorrow is the National Council meetings, tomorrow on Monday, and this number will kind of filtrate into that system. And somebody there will have to accept that this is what the devotees want. So I'm putting on the table, is 20% reasonable? We're at 30%. What number can we settle on? March.
What is Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu?
What does Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu say? Where is Vibhu Chaitanya? Hare Krishna. Wow. 200%?
20 is reasonable.
20 sounds reasonable. Because that's 3 times your inflation rate. So 20% it is. So our book distribution minister is accepting 20%. BBT Africa will have to organize itself accordingly. So resolution number 1 is that we want to increase BTG by 20% in the next 12 months. Hare Krishna. That's number 1. Number 2, there was somewhere ISKCON 50 was discussed. Vibhu Chaitanya, help me out. In the Sabona newsletter that you referred to, you spoke about 500,000 books for Srila Prabhupada's, for ISKCON 50. Do I have the number right? 500,000?
It's changed after that, Prabhu.
What was it going to now?
For ISKCON 50?
Yeah.
Well,
And a consultant lawyer?
no, initially it was, we came up with that amount, but we figured out it's just impractical at the moment. It's far away. We love to do it, but it's far away.
500,000 will be 2.5 times the African average, if you follow the numbers. Africa distributes 200,000 books, so 500,000 would be about 2.5 times that as one country, so that would be a stretch target. So what would be a reasonable target? So you got good advice right next to you there, so
Well, for December we're planning 100.
You saw what the Kenyan devotees said when they were going through the presentation. The mistake they made is think that books are only meant for a particular time in the year. So December gets favored and January and February and March gets ignored. So if the months would have a fight, yeah, December would be very happy and the others won't. Is there a way we can develop a kind of system that talks to every day as a, book a day or something like that? So 100,000 books would be, in 12 months, would be 10,000 books roughly a month. And that's 10,000 books a month are roughly 30 a day, 300 a day. For a congregation of our size where there are 10,000 devotees, then mathematically it just doesn't add up. Am I right? If we talk about it for one marathon, for one December marathon in 30 days, it sounds a lot. But for 12 months, what would we say? Now that we've published it, we're doing 500,000. What would be the discounted number?
Maybe the devotees can help us here.
If the book distribution minister is looking for help, there's a great opportunity to say something. Sunil Mohan, what do you think? Anybody else has a view? So you're saying it's 100,000 for the whole year? That's 3 times what we're doing at the moment. 2 times.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, true. Sundar.
Well, we need to get the matter.
Is this an ISKCON? It's not an ISKCON resolved matter yet, though.
Not at the moment.
You're mediating something.
Trying to, but
Okay.
my suggestion is we get the Mataji from Kenya to come up here and spend a year.
Dr. Rasini, what have you done?
Corporate coaching.
What will happen to Kenya?
Huh?
What will happen to Kenya?
She wants to know what will happen to South Africa if she...
Kenya will be chasing South Africa.
You see the difference? I mean, another difference is that, just an observation, is that Dwarkavasini is a disciple of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. So those of us who work with Gopal Krishna Maharaj would know that Maharaj's entire existence, his entire, everything about what he does and says about book distribution. It's a fact. So you find most of Maharaj's disciples who are involved, they are very involved in book distribution. So yeah, we'd have to get the respective spiritual masters to encourage. You might be surprised to know there may be some initiated devotees in this audience who have never been out on books, who don't know what it feels like, the bliss and the special joy that comes from having a book bag on your shoulder and standing on the street. The reason for that is because just the way things have evolved, But what we want to do here is make a dramatic change from what was there in the past. Guru Garanga Prabhu.
Could I make a humble suggestion?
Yes.
You mentioned the number of initiated devotees.
Yeah.
Maybe you could have somebody contact them, and then every initiated devotee has to try to commit to 100 books a year. So if you have 1,000, that's 100,000 books, just from the initiated devotee, because 100 books a year is only 10 a month or so. So it's just a suggestion.
Okay. So 100 books a year would mean 15,000 would mean 1,500 times 100, right? That's what? 15,000? Vibhu Chaitanya's got 100,000 on the table. So 150. 150. Vibhu Chaitanya's 150,000 there. Wow, Vibhu Chaitanya. He's gone into consulting again.
Well, Saradhamara Prabhu had a good idea, no?
Let's hear it.
Well, in Vibhu Prabhu's presentation, he said that only 330 devotees participated in book distribution. Maybe another way of setting a goal instead of 100,000 or 500,000 books is to commit to get 1,000 devotees to actively participate this year in book distribution. And we can maybe work it, look at a goal that way instead of trying to set 500,000, which is leaving me a little breathless at this point. But maybe 1,000 devotees seriously taking up, and then that really, impels all levels of management, spiritual masters, national leaders, everybody to push the devotees on that level instead of pushing a quota of books. That would be one suggestion.
So I have two challenges. We promised to finish at 5. It's now 10 to 5. We still have to do the vote of thanks and go into the arati. And we have a deadlock, Maharaj, so we need your intervention. So Damodar Prabhu has a suggestion. You heard that suggestion. And Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu said 100,000, and Guru Gauranga Prabhu said it should be around 150,000.
I think that between those numbers, 100 and 150, some compromise should be made. And I think that Damodar Prabhu's point is also valid, so it sounds to me like you've got two resolutions there. I don't know if 1,000 is the number, but I like the idea of saying we only had 300 devotees out distributing books, and by some proportion we'd like to increase that, whether it's 500 or 700 or whatever the number might be that the management would decide on. I think it is a very progressive step, along with the idea of distributing X number of books.
So should we say that it's a hybrid approach? What we're saying is, we had 300 devotees participating last year, now we want to get sort of down to 500. So is that fair, for the first half of the resolution? To get more devotees participating. And when more devotees participate, then quantitatively the books would go up. And, somewhere there's a target of about 150,000. Hare Krishna. So we settle with that. Anybody has any violent objection to that? No? So those are the two resolutions I had that came out of my notes. Does anybody else feel there's something else we should be adopting, seeing that we spend so much of your valuable time? Yes.
Resolving French Africa, we need a proper plan for French Africa.
Maharaj, Chariteshwar. We've spoke about this in Mauritius. We spoke about this in Ghana. We had the North European BBT intervene to try and help. Maharaj in his presentation said, it's an area of failure. I agree with Maharaj. We have not done enough to help Francophone Africa. If we make a resolution here, the South African devotees can't really contribute to it, but as BBT, what we wanted to propose, and Mukundangiri Prabhu was right, that we take ownership of the problem, and that we propose a solution that we will send to you and to the devotees in Ivory Coast. Is that acceptable, Maharaj? I think 500 books arriving in Ivory Coast might not be, it's a great victory, but we're looking for a Mahabharat-sized victory, something colossal. So Martin, that's okay? So that's the third resolution.
I propose and Congo also.
Yeah, and Congo also, which is also French. That's it. So we have the three resolutions. We don't have any more. We will not be able to execute.